Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Gary Allen. I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Josh Kalish, who we'll introduce in just a second. Today,
Okay.
we're going to tell a story about law firm compensation, about a firm that is transitioning from a founding partner to a next generation. This webinar is eligible for credit through the Association of Legal Administrators for those of you who are ALA members. Just always like to give a little pitch for this organization because I think it's a great community and place of learning for legal administrators. So if you're an administrator and you're not a member of ALA, I encourage you to take a look at it. So just a brief introduction of me. I am a 35-year practicing attorney, recently retired. I had a lot of pain from bad business practices in my early years, which led to, I was actually in a couple of firms that imploded early in my career. And that's given me a real passion to help law firms become more efficient and profitable. Along the way, I founded LeanLaw, which is a legal billing software company. I'm joined today by Josh Kalish, who is one of the smarter legal business consultants that I know. Wall Street guy, he's a management consultant and strategic partner of a company called Law Firms of the Future. So welcome, Josh.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
All right, let's get started on our story. So this is about a law firm named Nelson and Nelson. And Horace Nelson has been the founder and the leader of this firm for many years, and has still got a ways to go in his career, but unexpectedly has a near miss when he's mountain climbing in Patagonia, has a change of heart, and he decides to retire. And his firm, about a 20 or so lawyer firm, is at a crossroads. Now we're going to meet a few of the people in this firm as we go on. Just a quick introduction. Atticus, Josh is going to role play in just a second, is the Horace's son and the presumptive managing partner. Julia is a hard-charging, high-producing 40-year-old partner. Francesca, more into lifestyle, raising her family, a partner in the firm. Marvin is a hard-charging associate, and Glenda is a paralegal. So with that background, we're going to start this with a conversation between Horace, played by me, and Atticus, played by Josh. So Atticus, you've just had this news dropped on you. I've just dropped this news on you. What are you thinking at this point?
Right. So Atticus walks into Horace's office. Horace had just called him in, and he makes the announcement. So I'm Atticus. So Horace, I understand you're leaving the firm then. How much time? How much time will it be before you leave?
I had this epiphany when I was in Patagonia, hanging by a thread from a cliff there, that life is so short. I mean, I don't want to leave you in the lurch, but I also don't want to spend more time than I need to, working here after all these years. I want to get out and enjoy my life. So I'd like to transition as quickly as possible. How much time do you think you need?
Whew. I've always kind of dreamt that at some point, my name would be on the door, and I'd be the managing partner. I thought we were still 10 years away.
Right. Well, I apologize, but life experience just got in the way, and I need to move on to other things. You've already taken on a lot of the management work in the firm, so I'm hoping that this isn't too big of a transition for you.
It seems like it. You've been the one that's made all the major decisions, right? I've tried to help out on some of the administration, things like that. Do we have a succession plan, like a formal succession plan that we can rely on?
Oh gosh, I hadn't really considered that before. I always just felt like this is my law firm, and that I was meant to lead it. So I guess we have to deal with that.
Okay. And I don't mean to be brash, but am I going to get an increase in salary or what's that going to look like?
Well, it's going to be your firm. So you've got to figure that out along with the other people. I think you value the contributions that everybody makes here. So, let's figure out, well, you'll need to figure out how to do that. I'll help you as I can while I'm here.
Okay. Okay. I appreciate that very much. Well, thank you and good luck with your transition. I hope you can stick around for a while we go through this. Do you want me to talk to the other folks at the firm and let them know?
I think the sooner you can step into leadership here, the better myself. So why don't you meet with all the other folks in the office?
Okay. All right. All right, so that's the initial conversation, and then we'll start to go through and start to peel back what the current comp looks like and the contributions to the firm. I do want to remind everyone we do have the Q&A open, and we've got eyes on that throughout. So if you have any questions you want to pop in or points you want us to cover, we certainly have um, the last 15 minutes or so. We're going to have a pretty healthy conversation around that. But if there are any particular things, we are monitoring both the chat and the QA.
Awesome. So we've already talked about Horace. Now, the next meeting is between Atticus and Julia.
Mhm.
So let's pull up Julia here and get a little sense of her. So again, as I mentioned earlier, Julia, I'm a hard charger. I, you know, I'm really high producer and important to the firm. So now you walk into my office, and this is the first I've heard of this transition. So
Yeah.
how
So,
does
Julie,
that?
thanks for coming in. Um, I've got an announcement. I'm going to get right to it. We haven't had a formal announcement, but I wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with everyone. Horace will be leaving the firm. He's stepping aside, and I will be taking over as managing partner. I just want to make the rounds with everyone. We're going to have obviously a transition period that we need to get through, and I just want to make sure that everyone's going to be aligned with that.
Wow. Can you wait a second while my head stops spinning? Because that's a pretty big deal. I mean, this firm's been all about Horace from the beginning. It was certainly one of the reasons I came here. Um, so, gosh, what are we gonna, what happens next?
Well, there's going to be a transition, and we'll lay out those steps. But the first thing I want to do is just recognize the contributions that you make to the firm. With Horace leaving, I know we haven't had great transparency in the past around productivity and compensation, but I do know that with Horace leaving, there's going to be a big gap in terms of our business development. And as far as I can tell, you're the second biggest rainmaker at the firm. And I'm not sure that you've been compensated in a way that reflects that. So that's certainly something, that we're going to be looking at when
Well,
we.
frankly, I certainly feel that way. And, you know, I, frankly, that was something that might have caused me to leave the firm. So, I was definitely chafing at the compensation. So I look forward to a new approach on that.
Good. That's great to hear. And I just wanted to reassure you we're going to take a real good look at that. And I realize in the past you haven't really been contributing or been asked to contribute to firm leadership. We're going to need that from all of the partners. What are your thoughts in terms of where you can contribute to some of the non-billable work, the firm building work? What are your strengths there?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly a good rainmaker. I've already proven that. So to the extent that's considered part of management, I think that's probably the logical place for me to focus my efforts.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to need a
What,
little bit more than just that. We're going to need help with recruiting, with mentoring, with innovation. So yes, business development is absolutely key, but we're going to have to figure out how to divvy up some of the management responsibilities.
well, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of capacity to fit things like that in. We're going to have to figure that out. And of course, I'd expect to be compensated in some way.
For sure. And I have to actually figure that out for all of us, myself included. I think I'm probably going to have the heaviest lift here in the new managing partner role. So we will have to try to figure out how that's going to work.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me know. I've got a lot to think about.
Okay.
All right. So next,
Francesca, thanks for coming in.
yeah. Well, yeah. Hi, Atticus. We don't talk too much in the office. What's going on?
Been really heads down. I'm going to get right to the news. Horace is stepping aside. He's leaving the firm.
Wow.
I've been appointed to be managing partner. We haven't made a formal announcement, as you know, but I wanted to have one-on-one conversations with everyone so they could hear it from me first.
Oh, I appreciate that. Wow. So, gosh, what is this going to mean for the firm?
Well, there's going to be some changes, and you're a partner, and you're going to be a part of that. How's it going for you? Let me start with you. How's it going for you?
Well, family's really important to me. So, I plan later on in my career to really dive into my practice in a different way than now. But, frankly, now I want to just, you know, uh, keep a foot in the door, and I want to be a productive partner. But I also really value uh, being with my kids when they're young, and not and having a good life balance. So I don't know. How do you think that fits in with the firm after Horace?
Well, we're going to have to figure that out. This is a time for partners to step up, not to step out. There's going to be a big revenue gap with Horace leaving. I know we talk about balance of work-life balance, but really the firm is going to have to come first, especially during the transition for the next 6 to 18 months.
Mm, okay, that's a lot to think about. I kind of like what I'm doing. It works for me. If there's a lot more that's required, I don't know how that's going to play out for me.
And I don't either. And we're going to have, you are clearly part of the partner management committee. We're going to have to, we're going to have some issues around the loss of cash, frankly, from Horace's departure. We're going to be looking at some different productivity models. We're going to be bringing in two consultants to help us with that. And I know in the past we haven't really, it's been essentially a salary comp model and we haven't really had clear targets in terms of productivity. But we're going to be moving towards that. Is my feeling. We'll have some conversations with the consultants and see what they come up with.
Okay, well, I enjoy working here, I really don't want to have to transition, so hopefully we can work something out.
Absolutely. No, look, we're trying to create a culture and a comp model and a team that's aligned with clear targets. So our expectations are very, very clear. Now, I'm not trying to make any type of major moves. This is the team we've got, and this is the one we're going to stick with.
Okay, okay. Well, look forward to what's next.
All right, all right. Marvin, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Atticus. What's going on?
Well, let me get right to it. Horace is leaving the firm. I've been tapped.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. Surprise. About 10 years before I thought it was going to happen, I've been tapped to be managing partner. We haven't made a formal announcement yet, but obviously I wanted to have this conversation with you directly. You are a very, very talented associate here. You're very valued. You're one of the harder working, if not the hardest working associate. And I just want to let you know that I'm really looking forward to you working with us through the transition and hopefully continue to be a big contributing part of this team. And we got partner track eyes on you.
Well, that's good to hear. Boy, you know, I joined this firm for a career, not, I really want to stay here. But boy, this is a big deal. I mean, Horace was the face of the firm, and it makes me nervous that he's going to be gone. How are we going to replace that?
Yeah. Well, we're all the other partners are going to have to chip in. And again, we're going to be looking at all the different pieces, the strategic plan, the operating plan, as well as, taking a hard look at the comp model. I got to tell you, I don't even know how much you make, Marvin. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that. We haven't had that kind of transparency. How much are you getting paid, and do you feel like you're getting fairly compensated?
Well, I make 125,000 a year, but I, produce 600,000 in revenue. So that seems like that's not enough based on what I'm doing. And, the whispers I hear around town are there are places where I could make a lot more.
No, I get that. 125 is not. And how long have you been with us? With 6 years?
5 years.
Okay. We'll definitely take a look at that. Hang on tight. There's going to be some changes, obviously.
Hmm.
And I know that we've got eyes on you for partner track, but in the meantime, definitely want to make sure that you're getting paid fairly for the work that you're going to be bringing in and continue to bring in.
Okay, well, thanks. Again, I'm sitting here kind of shocked and nervous, so hopefully we'll figure something out.
Well, it's going to be a transition. We're all going to be a part of it. I got an open door with you. There are going to be some changes, but we're gonna be smart about it.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay.
Linda, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, thanks, Atticus. What's the occasion?
Yeah. So Horace is leaving. Horace is leaving.
Wow.
He's tapped me to be managing
Oh my
partner.
gosh.
We didn't have a formal announcement because I just wanted to be able to have a one-on-one with everyone in the firm. Um, so I'll be taking over management responsibilities. I'm going to need some help. I'm certainly going to be leaning on you to help out with some management as well as the legal work. But I just kind of primarily want to check in. How are things going for you now, and how are you with the firm?
Well, I mean, I've been with the firm for 20 years, so I'm pretty comfortable here, and I like what I'm doing. I mean, I have a good life balance that I like,
Hmm.
and I know I do good work, and I want to continue doing good work, but I'm not interested in becoming part of a sweatshop at this point.
No, and I get that. I don't think that it's not. I wouldn't think of it as a sweatshop. I will say during the transition, we have to figure out the money. And Horace leaving is going to be a big void in terms of our cash flow. Uh,
Hmm.
and so I'm not envisioning cuts as much as I am just looking at some possible realignment. We brought in two consultants to help us work through it. This is not really my strong suit. I'm an attorney. I practice law, but for the foreseeable future, I'm probably going to be spending half of my hours just doing firm management. I'm hoping that you're someone that I can lean on to help us with that.
Okay, well, I've been here a long time and have loyalty to the firm, so I'm willing to pitch in. I hope we make something work out.
Thank you. I'm sure I can rely on you.
Okay, so now we're going to switch, uh, kind of move into a different mode where Josh and I are now the consultants, and we're going to start talking about what's going on in the firm.
Mhm.
So here we've put up everybody's production on here. So Josh, what stands out to you as you look at this?
Yeah, so 3.1 million. And we've got and the working collected, that's the actual billable work. This firm seems to be pretty much Horace's firm. And right. And so you've got a pretty typical, if not even exaggerated, founder scenario where he has the relationships. Hard to tell how long. Again, the big chunk of this going toward the origination. Don't know how long he's been sitting on these relationships. Don't know if there's sunset provisions. We do see, and we this came out in the conversation with Julie earlier in the session. She's bringing in $1 million. We hadn't talked quite about what type of practice area it is yet, but the fact that she's bringing in $1 million a year in new business is someone that we really need to make sure that we secure as a key person.
Yeah, well, and she's a responsible attorney on 1.5 million. which means she's probably servicing some of Horace's clients.
And remarkably, she's billing as much as Horace and probably at a lower bill rate. So she's putting in more hours and she's collecting more than anybody else in the firm.
Yeah, yeah, she's definitely ambitious. I worry about her in this scenario that, she's somebody who probably has a lot of options. So we need to make sure that she's treated well as
Yeah,
part of this.
yeah. What else stands out? Marvin, again, 600,000, pretty decent for his salary at 120. But we're definitely seeing Julian and Francesca have been in the firm about the same amount of time. And we've got
Hmm.
to try to figure out how we can have some equity around that. How are we going to have, again, we're committed to a certain extent in terms of the salaries. I don't see that for the foreseeable future, we're going to reduce salaries in exchange for some potential upside on productivity. Perhaps that's something we would want to address in the longer term, but in the short term, we have to figure out how we're going to be marketably equitable to Julia and how we're going to get Francesca to at least cover her costs and her margins.
Right. Yeah, it does seem like Francesca's a good long-term asset to the firm. Not as critical as Julia to keep, but still, you don't want to lose her if you can help it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's now take a look at, they gave us some compensation information about where the firm is now. And this is just kind of a classic old school lockstep firm where the compensation is divvied up based on longevity, apparently, more or less. So Horace has been there forever and has accumulated a lot of equity. Atticus, Julia, and Francesca all been there at the same time, same amount of time. So they're making the same amount. Marvin and Glenda on roughly market salaries for, the average for their area. So, I mean, not hard to pick out some sore spots here. What do you see,
Oh,
Josh?
so this, so apparently the only thing the firm values right now is how long you've been, and that typically, is going to reward people not on their productivity, but just by getting in it and sitting in it, right?
Right,
Again, no idea that Atticus would have been below based on his contributions and management responsibilities. I think if Atticus found out and he's going to find out what Francesca was making, that she's having able to spend time with her family, and I wouldn't say she's phoning it in, but she's doing the minimum she can to remain professional. Where Julia is absolutely crushing it with new business as well as her own billings. We've got some real pay disparities here, is what I see. What do you see there, Gary?
yeah, definitely. I mean, Julia in particular, she could probably make double that at somewhere else in her city.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot to work on there. It's kind of remarkable the firm has stayed together as well as it has with this compensation system.
So there's the sort of double-edged sword. While we lose the revenue and net Horace's loss is a net loss for sure. It definitely is going to free up some of the cash flow in terms of how the percentage wise of the profits and productivity, how that's been disseminated. So hopefully we
Right,
have some variable upside, meaning either some fee-based incentives or some fee splitting, some other things that we could potentially take a look at.
right, right. Okay, so now let's just sort of set a scenario for how production changes after Horace. So he's gone. He's gone off to an island or wherever, live in the mountains, whatever he decides to do. So some things are going to change, and just we'll create a scenario here that shows how that might work. So he's the 1.4 million origination goes away apart from whatever he's compensated in his buyout. And what happens is Atticus winds up with some of that, and Julia winds up with some of that. We'll just say that Horace's the work he's responsible for, that's just going to go away entirely. And then work collected, his amount goes away, but Julia and Francesca are each able to pick up some of that. His management hours would be reallocated to Francesca and Marvin. And, so at the end of the day, the firm is a little bit smaller, 2.6 million. Overhead goes down proportionately. Obviously, there might be some kind of painful cuts on the staff level with him gone. Do you have any thoughts about things the firm might need to think about here?
Yeah. So again, this is just sort of a quick view of what the initial transition might look like. We may want to try to build in more management hours for Julia. We might want to build in more management hours for Francesca.
Mm-hmm.
Got Atticus, previously at 1,000 hours. Can he continue to do that in addition, do all of Horace's responsibilities within that same 1,000 hours? And we're going to have to take a look at whether there's some value to having Atticus even reduce some of his
Yeah.
management time to be able to, if he's billing at a higher level.
In my own firm, we had a very strong founding partner like this. He kind of did everything on the management side. And then the second generation, it took two people to, to cover that job along with their practices. And then in the third generation, it took three. So, I think it's not a bad idea to look at spreading out those management responsibilities.
Yes, yes. And there's a number of different ways we can do that by function, but we're also going to have to figure out, what are we paying them? Are we going to pay them internally, an internal?
Right.
That's the same as their external bill rate. Will that make sense? Yet, if you don't pay people to run a law firm, people won't volunteer to run a law firm.
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't just happen. Okay, so just to complete the math, here's what the numbers look like after Horace and those adjustments. So Atticus has now picked up quite a bit of origination and and see, he did not pick up responsible attorneys, but he and Julia are way up in the origination department, and we were able to reallocate a little bit of working time to Julia and Francesca. Obviously, Julia is very busy here on the working side. She might need some help as this plays out.
Yeah. So I think from the CFO perspective on this, again, there's the broader strategic CFO, but if you're looking just in terms of cash management, the origination and responsible numbers, those are a little bit of softer numbers, right?
Yeah.
Where
Mm-hmm.
the decisions that we're going to have to make during this transition are going to have to be funded from collections, right? And it's important to know, I would ask, and we haven't covered this yet, but what type of a practice area is this law firm? If it's corporate, then some of these origination credits could be from relationships that have been around for 3, 5, 10 years. And there's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a reason to continue on if we decide to look at some changes to the comp model. Transferring some of those relationships to other people may not be a fair way to move firm dollars, and there certainly is going to be some hot conversations around that.
Yeah, I have no doubt some blood was spilled in how the origination was allocated.
For sure. So we still got eyes on the Q&A. If anybody wants to.
No questions yet on Q&A, but
Okay.
please speak up, folks. We'd love to make this very interactive.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we probably need to keep going here because we've got a lot to cover here in the next half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about some important considerations as we turn to the compensation side of this. And one of them is just about cash. And this firm has is operating at a cash basis. And, I always feel like this is one of the most important things to get through to people is, if you're compensating people based on billable hours or on billings, you have turned your law firm into a bank. And you're probably not being paid for, which is probably not being compensated for taking those risks. So, I mean, my strong recommendation would be that the firm continue to operate on a cash basis. What do you think, Josh?
Absolutely, absolutely. Cash for taxes, cash for operating, and even doing payouts for collected, because we want to make sure that when we're paying out for attorney productivity, that we're paying out on money that's actually come in the door, right? If we have, and we don't know this, but we have attorneys that are aggressively billing and we're not able to collect on it because they're write-offs or pushbacks, then we want to make sure that we're only, from a management perspective, that we're only paying out on dollars come in the door. One thing I do want to I would say as consultants coming into this fictitious firm, and I want to open this up for some feedback on the chat. What type of culture do you think this firm has right now? And what do you think its willingness to change, to transform is? I'm gonna give you all a few seconds to type something in the chat, Blair.
Yeah, it's look like we're having, people are shy as they often are on these webinars.
That's
And
okay.
here we go. Lack of transparency has created a lot of fear, which can be damaging, may be hard to recover from that.
Okay, love that.
I
Love
love
that.
that too. As we were playing those conversations, I mean, just very naturally, I was talking about fear in almost every one. Like, it's such a big change. And, I mean, the culture was Horace in a firm, in a firm like this, it almost has to be. So now they're kind of starting over from a cultural standpoint, and with a whole different generation of people who have different expectations about transparency and a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Don. Thank you. And absolutely, because Atticus steps into his new role and he doesn't even know what the other people are making at the firm. I mean, he
right,
understands that there's a lockstep. He doesn't know if there's additional bonuses for certain people or what's going on there. And again, the other piece of it is the transparency. As we start to go through this, as Atticus, with the new version of the firm, it's going to be they're going to have to make some strategic decisions about just how transparent they want to be.
yeah, I agree.
There could be some really hard feelings about if some of the past compensation figures, along with the productivity, if they get out. So that's
Yeah,
something.
they have a lot of expectations to reset in this firm. So we probably ought to get moving to make sure we get through everything.
Mhm.
So let's spend a moment talking about overhead. We don't have to get too far into this. So if you're going to have a production-based compensation system, part of that conversation is overhead. How are the expenses of the firm allocated against the revenue that different producers create? And we've put a few alternatives up here. Just I'll just outline them really quickly. Pro rata, which is more or less how this firm has run to the extent that it calculated people's profitability, which is just everybody has the same overhead allocation. Um, and then there's a second option is to make it proportionate to production. So you assume that higher producers consume more overhead, so they pay a higher percentage. You can have a tiered system where maybe you have one overhead allocation for paralegals, one for associates, one for partners. And then some firms actually try to do actual use where okay, you have 0.4 or 40% of a secretary and you use this many billing resources. et cetera, which is great if you can actually figure that out, but it's very hard and very divisive. So what's your experience, Josh, on what kind of how firms handle this question of allocating overhead?
Most firms handle it very poorly. I will start with that. You're squeezing a balloon here, right? The overhead,
Right.
what it is, right? And how you I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to contradict myself in the very next sentence, right? It is what it is in terms of you're going to try to share some percentage of that or attribute the use of the assets of the firm, right? And so we're talking office space, computer, central functions, facilities, technology, back office operations, all those things.
Hmm.
Uh, and then the other part of it is to be aligned as a firm so the people that are consuming those services um, are the ones that are benefiting from it and the ones that will end up potentially absorbing some of those costs. But overhead is one of the situations. The more you talk about overhead, all you're doing is making your overhead go up, and you're never making it go down unless you get some some cost cutting measures in there. One of the biggest things, and we can kind of use this analog as we go through the different methodologies, is office space. And one of the things coming out of COVID, in the current hybrid model or the on-site versus off-site model goes to overhead. So as we go through these, we can look at this. If there's an office space, and if I can save my overhead allocation by not using an office, and I do all of my work from home, have I furthered the goals and the strategy of the firm?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. So when you have alignment in your overhead allocation or just how you treat overhead, you're not going to have these adverse consequences where you have office space that now the firm is having to build. It doesn't allocate it to anyone, and yet we're overpaying um, by not attributing the allocation to that
Yeah.
particular practice area or that particular person.
I just want to add one thing from my experience, which is in my firm, the good one, the overhead was very transparent and it was very closely tied to your compensation. So it's like you had a spreadsheet that says, here's your revenue factors, now here's your overhead, and here's what you get paid. And that created a pretty healthy culture in keeping overhead low. Now, maybe there were investments that should have been made that weren't. So we kind of, might have gone too far. But basically, it was something we used to recruit lawyers from other firms because you get to take more money home. And I think that's something to consider in all of this is, what what do people know about overhead and how does that fit into the culture of the firm?
Absolutely. So imagine a conversation between Julia and Francesca, right? So if you're
Hmm.
proportionate to production, Julia's killing it with 750,000 and Francesca only has 300 out of, if Julia's involved with some fee sharing, but she is getting twice as much of an allocation charge and she's using the exact same level of resources, what is that conversation going to sound like?
Yeah, that's ugly. Yeah. On the other hand, it could be productive because you have somebody like Francesca who's going, I don't want to, I want to keep overhead low. And if we are, have some sort of pro rata sharing or close to pro rata sharing, she's going to be somebody who's like, I've got my eyes on that so that, we don't get into these situations where, well, you see in a lot of firms where, oh, I think I could sneak in another half of an assistant and, and that make my practice feel better. And everybody else pays the cost or most of it.
Sure. And what if one partner wants to go on 20 different first class conferences during the course,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, in my experience, the best overhead methodologies have been the ones that, first of all, the best ones recognize the alignment between who's spending it and who's picking up and absorbing that cost, right? And if you
Hmm.
look at it, most firms typically 45, 55% of overhead is going to salaries. Okay.
Right.
That doesn't even necessarily include fee sharing or bonuses and things like that. Then you probably have another 10%, again, rough numbers, another 10% office space, another 10% technology infrastructure, telephony, all those things. So when you're actually getting down to it, you're probably left only with about 20 to 25% of discretionary overhead, right? So
Hmm.
if one estate planning wants to use some type of a wealth prep trust creating deed generating software or those types of things, right? Another practice area wants to spend a lot more money on business development, on marketing, on SEO, right? All of those things. So if you can tie the usage to the person that's actually going to be benefit and to have and align those expenses with it within the comp model even
Yeah.
start to get, I think, to much more equitable alignment across the firm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like if the values align with the overhead model, you're going to do a lot better. Cool. Well, let's move on since we've got a lot to cover yet.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the big issues that's going to have to be dealt with here is Horace's transition. Let's just spend a couple of minutes on this one, even though it's a big long list of stuff. But he's been the managing partner. How are his duties reassigned? What about his client relationships and origination, and his equity buyout and transition?
Yeah. So
So
we've got the
just a
line up.
couple, you have some quick thoughts here.
Yeah, while we have the chat open, if everyone could just kind of describe what types of managing partner duties at a functional level that Atticus has to take over. We'll wait for some of those to come in. Um, yeah, so transition. This is classic management, change management, which is to first and foremost make sure nothing breaks. And how do you do that? Well, you make sure that everyone gets paid. You figure out payroll. You figure out, do you have enough money uh, to get paid? There's going to be some some efforts that are going to be required in terms of how the messaging around the transition. How do we go out to clients? So yes, we've been focusing on a lot of internal things, and particularly the comp model. We have to manage the messaging, what this means with Horace leaving the firm. Is there going to be a name change? Are there certain clients that we're going to lose? How is that going to potentially impact this? Is there any way that we can get some upside on some of this? Is there other? So we're going to have to manage all of that externally. You want to talk about some of the internal things that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, Gary?
So I mean, I see. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that has to be addressed there. I mean, we're in a situation where Atticus is doing 1,000 hours of something. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a heads up. But to the extent that Horace was, you know, kind of managing the staff or hiring and things like that, that's all that's got to be dealt with. So, you know, a lot to do to organize and make sure that that happens smoothly. Let's see. So we have Don has given us some good thoughts. High level HR issues, approving new hires, approving loans, insurance plans, pension 401(k) administration. Who is dealing with all of that when Horace leaves? Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So
Somebody's apparently been here before. So,
absolutely. So functionally, right? We still have mentoring that we have to take care of. We have
right.
again recruiting. You've got that in new hires. Innovation, right? Every firm in the country is either talking about AI, planning to talk about it, or actually doing something about it, right? And what's that going to look like? The strategic piece of it, you're losing a lot of institutional knowledge with Horace's departure. So, what type of strategic plan we do have in place? We heard that there isn't a succession plan, so we don't have one now to get us through this transition. Wouldn't it
Right,
make sense to use this opportunity to create the succession plan based on the learnings we're actually going through? So you'll have one, and getting that more closely aligned, even with partner track
exactly.
planning.
So I'm sure there's much more we could talk about there, but let's move on to
Mhm.
make sure we get to everything here. So we have now let's kind of talk about what their choices are as far as compensation models. Um, and let me just introduce each of these.
Mhm.
As we talked about earlier, they could go to a continue a lockstep system where everybody gets paid the same. That seems very unlikely in this firm.
We agree.
I don't think we should recommend that.
Yep.
Number two is an eat what you kill system, which is a purely production-based system. So you get a certain amount that's sometimes called the hail and door system or the finder, minder, grinder system. So in some form or another, you compensate the originating attorney, the responsible attorney, and the working attorney. Um, it's just a cash in, cash out kind of approach. You can soften that a little bit by having those production factors taken into account, along with an equity component. That's how my firm was structured primarily. We just also compensated managers. You can have a compensation committee, which doesn't use a formula, but uses some combination of those factors to allocate compensation. And then you can have something more of a salary plus bonus plus equity type of system. And you brought up the practice area earlier as being important as to what sort of decisions you make. And there may be some questions about how compatible the different practice areas are in the firm. What do you think here, Josh?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's a big, it's almost like a different type of company, right? If you have a law firm that has steady corporate work where they don't, oh, excellent. Let me jump on this right here. So Cheryl just asked, what do you mean by equity compensation? So in this case, you have salary and then you can have bonus based on productivity, whether it be formulaic or discretionary. And then equity would be the owners of the law firm that hold a certain percentage of shares would get would get their percentage of cut of the net income. Now the net income doesn't always go, all of it doesn't always go to partners. Some of it's retained within the firm that they reinvest, or they retain it to maybe increase their cash holdings. But there's some if you have a comp model that is paying specifically on productivity, then you might not get much of an equity distribution because all the cash that you have for owners has already been paid out through the productivity comp model.
Awesome. Um, unless you have any other comments here, let's move on.
I do. I
Oh,
do.
okay.
I
Let's
do
do. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So generally, some type of a hybrid makes sense, I think, in terms of eliminating the evils of each of these. So what are the evils of each of these, right? Lockstep, we've got Julia and Francesca. They're both going to get the same no matter how much they work. Eat what you kill. Well, it depends, if eat what you kill is how much you're billing, or also if you're having to bring in the work and you're getting paid on the work that you bring in that you actually work yourself. Production equity, yes, very good. Although that's not really compensating directly management, and firm building is so key, and it's often
Right.
done the compensation for firm building is often done very poorly. The compensation committee, again, it's a trade-off between transparency, which you're probably not going to have much, and fairness and discretionary decisions. So your favorite child is going to often get paid more. in those models, you're going to have a much more of an opaque decision-making process. The salary bonus and equity are good as long as you can align. But again, with equity, you're getting paid out by your shares, not by your contribution. And then
Yeah.
going back to over putting those within the context of a practice area, if you have a very volatile practice area, and volatile mean high turnover of clients, like in family law or employment, you need to have a different comp model that can sustain that. If you are a personal injury law firm and you're going for shoot the moon class action types of cases, you've got to make sure that your comp model doesn't drain you of your cash before you actually get paid on those bigger models. So looking at the context, I don't think there's any consultant that would ever rightfully make a recommendation on a comp model without, rubbing this up against the wall and in terms of the actual practice area. And if you have multiple practice areas, making sure you understand the diversification through portfolio management, portfolio theory.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing about salary plus bonus, which is uh, you're compared to a production plus equity system, is you are transferring some risk from the individual to the firm if you do that. So if people have really high salaries and then the money doesn't come in as expected, then you've got a big problem there. And there have actually been some pretty big law firms that uh, did not survive because of that type of system. So, you got to balance that risk versus um, the uh, what what the salary brings in terms of comfort for the lawyers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of potential for agency theory there, isn't it?
Yes, yes. All right, so let's go to the next thing. So I don't know we're going to have a lot of time to spend here, but this is just how things play out with these models. Um, so lockstep, you've got this problem that everybody's getting paid the same. Eat what you kill. Julia does really, really well there. Atticus probably not so much. You might be able to balance that with management payments, but still potentially issues there. And that's with pro rata overhead. With proportionate overhead, that brings Julia back to the pack a little bit, but might also make her uh, a little bit. She might not like that. Formula plus equity with pro rata overhead. Again, really high compensation for Julia. Problems here for Marvin and others. And then with proportionate overhead, again, Julia's paying a really high proportion. So all of those things we talked about kind of play out in the numbers when you run them. Thoughts there, Josh, or should we move on to your?
No, we got to stick right here because there's no way any of this is happening. If Atticus is managing partner, and again, this is how the numbers play out, but there is no way Atticus is making less than Marvin, right? In any of these
Yeah,
scenarios.
yeah, right.
And while we are trying to recognize Julia, Julia is making 3x what the managing partner is making, just in terms of ego alone, that's not going to fly.
Right.
So, situation where, again, this is a first cut. These are the different methodologies. These are how they play out. This is absolutely where you want to start because you need to be able to say, based on this, this is where it's going to go. You need to be able to make sure that you can fund it. But then you're going to have to absolutely right size this. What's missing for me that really, really, really stands out, probably overcompensating Julia, but most importantly, if Atticus is the first among equals, or if he has the majority shares, we don't know for sure, but if he's going to be the managing partner, we've got to figure out a way to make him to be compensated for the work that he's doing running.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's move on to the uh, our alternate modeling. So we have, this is for salary plus bonus, includes something for management payment, cash retained in the business, and some calculated return on equity. And Josh has made a great spreadsheet for us here. So I'm going to stop sharing and with that and share something else here. All right, so did that spreadsheet's popped up?
There it
So
is. There it is.
Josh, can you walk us through this really quickly?
Sure. And if you want to leave your contact info, we can certainly get this to you. It's again, just so you can see the logic in this particular model, as with most of my models, all of them actually. The inputs are yellow, and the calculations are in blue. So what we're looking at is we have to figure out a couple of things. So on the left side, if you're looking through columns B and C, how much cash are we collecting, and how much do we want to allocate for bonuses? Different ways you can do this. But what you want to say is you want to actually have a number, I think, for a bonus pool. You don't want to just give unlimited bonuses. You want to have them allocated fairly or based on your value system, which hopefully is fair. But you have to limit that. And then you want to actually have a target for how much is going to go to the owners. In this case, cell C12, calculated ROE, there's only out of the 2.6 million, there's only 200,000, sorry, 87,000 that's going to be split among the four partners. That's not a lot. Your calculated ROE is 3%. I like to see law firms, depending on what practice area they're in, somewhere at least 20-25% ROE, right? There's great risk in terms of owning a law firm. Not great risk, but there's risk, which is um, they're the last ones. If you're not making payroll, the partners and the owners, particularly start with the owners, so they're going to be the ones that aren't going to get paid first. So if you want to scroll down just a little bit there, Gary, we can see how these different allocations play out. So, yeah, there we go. So we want to recognize management, firm building hours, and we want to try to come up with an internal yield about how much we're actually going to pay, right? We can't have a law firm where Atticus makes the money he needs to send his kids through college only if he's billing, because he's not going to anybody would not spend the right amount of time actually managing the firm, and that's going to impact everyone. You want to look at terms of a market-based salary. If you were to retool this, you could have a salary that comes under market-based and have the upside come from your productivity. And in that case, Julie would be heavily rewarded for her productivity, and somebody like Francesca would not be overpaid
Mm-hmm.
market salary where she's not making the contributions.
Yeah, it seems like, this firm, they've either got to accept lower salaries or find a way to reduce overhead if they're going to, improve that return on equity
Right.
and make more sense as a firm. So,
One option is we could potentially do away with origination fees altogether. We could do away with responsibility credits altogether,
mm-hmm.
and just focus on productivity. That would have to see how that's borne out, but that certainly is an option. I don't think just because we are tracking this here means that we would be committed for this firm to continuing with those.
Makes sense.
And then if you scroll down a little bit there, Gary, thank you. You're going to see the bonus pool, and we can allocate what that would look like based on the different factors, the different variables, meaning the origination, the responsibility, and the
Mm-hmm.
actual working of it. And then when you pay that out, again, when you do that on a percentage basis, so you can create a bonus pool that's capped. For cash flow management purposes, you absolutely have to determine what your bonus pool is so you're not overpaying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we've got an equity component, right?
Mhm. Now, I'm checking the chat to see if there's any questions at all about the spreadsheet. Okay.
All right. So we do have,
Number of different ways to do this. This is certainly a very reasonable way to do it. If there's other
mm-hmm.
elements of your firm that you need to track, then you would add those in as well. But I would just recommend absolutely whatever comp model you put in place or comp plan you put in place, please, please, please make sure that you have one that shows how the money flows to all the different players and all the different scenarios. And you may want to even replicate it where you have sort of your target, your estimated, maybe even your reasonable worst case scenario. So you could copy your model across a number of different tabs within your spreadsheet, and you can change some of the assumptions about the revenue to see how that's going to impact your payouts.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we've used up our allotted time for the presentation. I think we got through most everything there, but we are more than happy to stay and address questions. And we're going to go ahead and continue with the remainder of the slides. If you need to check out now, that's totally fine, and you'll get a copy of the recording to catch the rest. So
Yep.
so thank you, everybody, and we will continue to record the rest of the presentation.
Yep. Good. And for
So
those,
let me see. Now we're going to stop that share, and we're going to go back to the slides. Okay, so now we're really just talking about what do you do with all of this and what seems best for this firm. So, I mean, obviously we've had a bunch of considerations here. If Josh, just where do you start with this recommendation for this firm?
I think I mentioned it earlier. You start with change management. Like, what is the culture? What are the values of the firm? What have they been up until this point? And how amenable is the firm to changes? There's going to be there necessarily has to be changes in terms of decision making because Horace is no longer there. There's going to be changes around the comp model. There doesn't have to be, but
Right.
certainly it was very lopsided, and there's no way that it's unlikely that using the previous comp model is going to be keep the firm producing at a level that's going to give it profitable sustainability.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
change
hopefully you can keep that compensation discussion on a principled level
management.
rather than, divide the pie kind of mentality.
Yeah. I think the next step, again, doesn't have to be in this order, but is laying out all the functional responsibilities of management, right? And so if it's facilities, technology, operations, HR, marketing, finance, and again, you can cut your functions any way that makes sense. Do you want to have a single point of leadership for each one of those functions? Right.
Right.
This actually has nothing to do with the practice of law. It has everything to do with the practice of business.
Which is always seems to be a sidelight for law firms, unfortunately. All right. So we wrote down some questions here, and for those of you who are still able to join us, we just like you to mark your top three here, and we're going to go ahead and respond to those. If we've still got a few people here in the audience, so
We
we'll give
do.
you a couple minutes to read through these, and we can prepare some responses as well to share with you if people want to check out or we can't get to all of these. All right, we've got a few choices. Keep going. Couple more. I'll give you about 10 more seconds. Sorry, this is a lot to read.
I'm
All
guessing
right,
the
so
issue.
I think
No,
that's
it'd be
everybody.
pretty easy to pick some that are relevant for you.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to share the results here.
Okay.
So, what is the right balance between hours billed, collection, and client management when calculating contributions? What do you think, Josh?
So, the short and inadequate answer is you need to bill enough that you can cover the cost of the firm, cover salaries, and then cover your target profit margin. One of the ways I look at this is looking at if you have productivity essentially a revenue producing role, is to look at it in terms of a multiple of their fully costed salaries, right? So fully costed, generally salary plus another 20 or 25% um, in benefits,
Benefits.
benefits covering taxes, those types of things. Um, so it generally looks at, and that's something that you can also model, right? You can model and say, hey, we need 20 billable hours from each person at their billable rate, and then maybe another 10 hours of firm building on top of that. But either way you do it, those are the components, and that's how you would model that out. It really gets to what your targets are for overall profitability, and
Hmm.
looking at again, the term non-billable, I much prefer the term firm building because those things have value. A lot of times the term non-billable is used at firms where they're organizing their files and it's something that they can't charge their
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
would.
my firm had a view of marketing, which is you do it to build your own practice. So you don't need to be, you're compensated by origination if you do that kind of work.
Mhm.
And so we were a libertarian bunch. So did not believe in assigning a lot of hours to people. Uh, but I could, most firms probably aren't going to take that path.
Sure. And so again, these are it's a great question because there's ways to approach it that again you have to balance that out. So let's look at Atticus. Let's say his bill rate is $500 an hour. Are you going to pay him $500 an hour to manage the firm?
Probably not.
If you do, then he is equally pleased about whether he's spending his day doing firm building or doing client work.
Right.
But if you say at $500 an hour is what it takes to get him to do it, then the next question is, well, can I pay someone 150 an hour to do half or three quarters of his management work?
Exactly. What can Alice do to help
Right.
out here?
And if he's, and how do you value his work? Well, if he's approving payroll that a finance director could do, that's one thing. If he's, bringing in a new client or able to recruit or even be part of an acquisition of another small firm, well, then he's probably worth 2,000, 5,000, $10,000 an hour doing that type.
Yeah. Hmm.
Great question.
So this is a similar question. How do we value non-billable but critical contributions such as mentoring, leadership, or business development? I think we got pretty deep into that.
Mhm.
Anything further you want to add there?
Well, their market-based indicators. You can look at, what would it take to bring in a consultant to help out with leadership? What can you source some of the mentoring?
Hmm.
Again, some of those things are invaluable because if in your mentoring, you're creating a future, a really good career trajectory for somebody, and you're having conversations around how they can be successful here at this firm, you're probably also doing retention. And what is the value of losing a lawyer? It's probably about $200,000 for each lawyer.
Yeah, it's huge.
When
Yeah,
you calculate in the quiet quitting, the transition costs, the hard dollars in the recruiting, the management attention of going through interviews, the disruption to the client relationships with those attorney, it's not nothing. So I think it's more than it can be very, very, very valuable when it's done right. And I think if you're only paying lip service to it versus paying hard dollars for it, you're going to get two different results.
makes sense. Makes sense. Yes. So we got one more. The third question is how do we prevent compensation disputes from undermining trust and culture within the firm?
You won't. You won't. And here's what's going to happen at this firm. Um, some people things are going to have to change in order to close the gap with Horace leaving. The disputes are going to happen. You have to get comfortable with having the hard conversations. to having the difficult conversations, but backing it up with fairness and kindness and reason and some transparency, right? You have to create a model that you believe in. You have to create a culture that you believe in. And some of the disputes are going to come from people that the change doesn't favor. Anytime you do something like this, there's going to be people where the status the status quo favors them, and you're going to
Mhm.
have the disputes. The question is, how comfortable can you get being uncomfortable having these difficult conversations?
Yeah, in my experience, it's so much about whether that's a values-based and fairness-based conversation as opposed to what am I going to get? Once it becomes people grabbing, explicitly at least people grabbing after their share, then it's going to get ugly. But if it's got a principled basis, you've got a much better chance of making it work. And, my firm was kind of built in a certain way from the beginning. So you bought into it when you showed up. This is much more difficult because you're kind of totally redoing the culture.
Hmm, yes, yes.
All right. So those are our questions. We'll, I'll provide some information on the rest of them in the follow-up. But okay, so we're going to give you one more chance here and to give us your feedback on what you think is the best way to, um, let's see, back. So which model feels most aligned for you? So here we go. Here's that one. So we've got a lockstep, eat what you kill, production plus equity, or salary plus bonus plus equity. Now, for purposes of this, presume that they figure out something to do production and equity that compensates Marvin or Atticus for management, just to make it fair. Okay, it looks like we've got, I think that's everyone. So I'm going to end the poll and give everybody a chance to see that. 3 of 4 of you like salary plus bonus plus equity, and 1 picked production plus equity. So if anybody wants to put something in the chat about why, or what made that difference for them, other than Josh's very persuasive presentation.
Well, I think what we're seeing here is a preference that a hybrid of the drivers that get you the values compensated are what's going to work best.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah, I think this firm's got a pretty tough row to hoe. And I didn't really appreciate that making up the scenario until we actually started talking through it. And it's like, there's going to be some big gaps here to fill. And it'll take some good work by everybody to make all that come together.
yep, no, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Gary.
Okay, so
Appreciate being invited as a guest today.
oh, thank you so much, Josh. I really enjoyed it. That was a great conversation. I think unless anybody else has any questions, um, we've got some additional information to pass along. So we'll get a law firm financial report card, which will give you a chance to see how your firm is performing against industry metrics. You'll receive the slides and recording and the potential a link to get a free consultation with me. You can email Josh for a free consultation, and we will send the spreadsheet and a little additional information on the questions.
Yep. So if anybody wants to keep the conversation going, just reach out to either Gary or myself, and we'd love to try to help you out.
All right. Thanks everyone so much, and we are adjourned.
Awesome.
Thanks, Josh.
Good job, Gary.
All
One
right, you too.
really came together nicely.
I thought so. That was a fun conversation. Hard to fit it all in an hour.
think we really covered it, though. I think we
Yeah,
really did.
I do. Okay. We'll
Wonderful.
talk to you soon. Bye
Thank you.
now.
Bye bye.